Now, when I was thinking about the title for this talk today, the story of is, navigating the intersectionalities of growing up mixed, I said to myself, wow, that's a mouthful. A wonky academic mouthful. And I said, maybe I should do something catchy like mixed but not mixed up. Reflections of a suntanned samurai. But I decided no, I would keep the title because as a mixed race professor, I wanted people of mixed race and biracial backgrounds to know that there were mixed race scholars like Teresa Williams and Emma Tang, Darcia Watkins, Leah Root, and others who are doing serious academic work, serious scholarly work to sort out and explain the complexities of their lives, to let them know that their experiences were not in isolation. Today, however, I'm going to, as they say in Hawaii, talk story. I'm going to share with you some stories about my life. And while I recognize that my experiences will not speak for all experience of mixed race persons, it's my hope that something about it will resonate with them. And I also want to talk about it because I believe there's something in the intercultural biracial families that we have that gives us some clues to our society, our nation, how we might navigate and engage our increasing diversity. I'd like to start with a story I wrote for my daughter Mariko when she was trying to sort out her mixedness in middle school. It's entitled First Days. I used to hate the first day of school. And because we're a military family, there were a lot of first days. And pretty much every one of them would go something like this. I'd meet someone and say, hi, my name is Curtis. What's yours? And after a little bit, they'd give me this sort of quizzical look and they'd say, what are you? Like I said, I used to hate first days. When I was little, I didn't know what that question meant. What are you? As I grow older, I understood that no matter what I asked, it would be wrong. If I answered one way, it meant something. If I answered another, it meant something else. And people would say, wow, but you look. Or, really? You don't look. What are you supposed to do with that? Like I said, I used to hate first days. Well, after some long talks with my mom and dad, I began to understand that the question, what are you, was not my problem or fault. I began to understand myself in terms of who I am, not what I am. So now, when those first days come and someone asks that question, the conversation goes a little bit like this. What are you? I am. Huh? What do you mean I am? I am. And I am. What? I am me, just as you are you. Both of us. You and me. The way we were made. Happy to be. So, as this story illustrates, the task of sorting out who I am and whose I am is sometimes complex. It requires a persistence of awareness, an awareness of self, as well as awareness of how others view you. See, as a mixed race person, I would always also get this question asked of me, and they would say, isn't it hard being mixed? I mean, not being accepted by either side? And like the character in the story, that was perplexing. Because it implied somehow that it would be easier if I would just choose to be black or Japanese. But I can't. I'm not. I'm both. I'm not either or, I'm either and. My mixedness is. My andness is. More complex is, perhaps, but it is nonetheless. You see, identity for all of us is this really interesting, difficult concept that is a constant process, born of history, culture, society, community, families, and even within that we play all these different roles. We are once male, female, trans. We are fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, brothers and sisters. Identity is not the singular moment or a singular thing. It is constantly morphing and adapting to context. And it's context that informs how we privilege and perform those various identities. Now, for the mixed-race person, that calculus is sometimes more complex as what we feel on the inside. That identity that centers us, that tells us that we exist, may not match what we look like on the outside. Mixed-race persons find themselves sort of described and understood by two sort of narratives or tropes in society. We were once the tragic mulatto, the hopelessly mixed up, unable to find acceptance by either of the groups that we're born into. Or we're hybrid vigor, the erasers of race, the hope for a post-racial America. But while our life's experience may encompass both of those tropes, neither defines us. Neither tells our story of isness. Neither tells our story of andness. Right? I think my daughter, Mariko, when she was 7, said it best. She was in 2nd grade, and I was at home working on my lecture notes for a class I was teaching on multiracial identity. And at 7 years old, she's looking at what I'm doing. And so it was spring break, and I said, hey, how'd you like to speak to my class tomorrow? And she's a bit precocious, so she said, yes. Well, later that day, as she was pondering what she might say, she started asking questions about her grandfathers, one Japanese American and one African American, about their service in the military. Her Japanese American grandfather had served in the 442nd 100th Regimental Combat Team during World War II, and her African American grandfather, had served 3 tours in Vietnam. So I thought she might do something that sort of mixed those two together. Well, the next day comes, we're on our way to the lecture hall, and she goes, Papa, Papa. Yes? She goes, can I use the whiteboard? Okay. Of course, in my head, I was going, what could go wrong with this? But we get there, and I introduce her to the class. And she turns, and she goes to the whiteboard, and she draws a happy face. And then she draws a sad face. And then she draws an angry face. Then she draws a happy face. She goes over and she starts a second column of happy face, sad, angry, happy. And you had a third column of happy, sad, angry, happy. She looked back at the class, and she put a J over one of them, and she said, sometimes I feel Japanese, and that makes me happy. When I say I'm Japanese, that makes some people angry. They don't like it when I say I'm Japanese, and that makes me sad. And then I get mad that they don't like that I'm Japanese. But I decide I don't want to be like them. And so I'm happy again that I'm Japanese. She then went to the third column and she put an A over it. And she turned back to the class and she said, sometimes I feel African American, and that makes me happy. And then again, some people didn't like it, and it would make her sad, and then she would get angry. And then she said, but I don't want to be like them, and I'm happy that I'm African American. She then turned to the middle column, and she put a B. And she said, sometimes I'm both. And she repeated the progression from happy, sad, to angry, to happy. Out of the mouth of babes. She got it. She got this dance of multiracial identity that is both simple and complex. Now, complexity at the individual family level can sometimes be played out in these sort of bicultural, nonverbal communication things. When I was little, I was pretty mischievous and got in trouble a lot, you can imagine. And when I'd get called out by my dad, he required that I look him in the eye. He was a first sergeant. But when I got called out by my mom and was in trouble, I was required to look down. My eyes diverted. On occasion, I'd get in trouble with both of them and get called at the same time. You can imagine this kid going, trying to figure out who to look to and what they were saying at the time. And I felt like one of those bobblehead dolls that you get out of a sporting bid. See, that complexity, though, was a thing that allowed us to have some great creation and celebration, especially around foods. Anybody ever tried teriyaki chitlins? Well, this family, this place allowed us to have wonderful stories of we that provided the platform for creating strong stories of is. When we try to sort of sort some of these things out, we get caught up once in a while, you know, because they're tough. But one of the things that I learned growing up in a biracial, binational, bicultural, bilingual family, and in the biracial, Buddhist, Christian, trilingual family that I created with my wife, Miki, we learned that diversity and difference is additive. We learned that it is not a zero-sum game, a game in which generosity and respect given to one is taking something away from the other. We understood that diversity and difference can make us more, not less. We learned also to be comfortable with conflict. And that conflict need not be confrontation. Sometimes conflict just is. And more importantly, we learn that if we would embrace that conflict, be comfortable with it, that we could engage each other and make a choice as a family to be more. Now, not to say there weren't struggles. There were. And as filmmaker Erica Anderson in her documentary None of the Above says, the struggle is real. And I'd add today, the struggle is righteous. We do have a choice, that there's a way, I believe, that we as a societal family have a choice to be comfortable with our conflict. Now, as an ethnic studies professor, I've heard countless metaphors for diversity. But there's one that stands out to me that I really like. It was told to me by some poets from Hawaii, a particular poet from Hawaii named Eric Chalk of Bamboo Ridge Press. And he was telling me a story about poetry writing in ancient China. He says, you know, when you look at a scroll from ancient China, you'll find that there's no author. A lot of times there won't be this stamp that shows who wrote the poem. He said that was because oftentimes scholars and poets and literati in a certain region, in a town or a village, would come together, share a meal, drink some wine, and compose poetry. One starting a line, the others bring another line, and so forth. Well, each week at this gathering, each poet would bring, tied up in a mesh bag, what they wished to eat that night. And in that bag there might be chicken with vegetables, and it's all seasoned up, tied tightly. Someone else might have fish, someone else might have a vegetable protein or tofu or something like that. And when they arrived, they would place it into a pot of boiling hot water that was in the center. At the finish of the cooking, they would extract their bag, open it up, and pour its contents into their bowl, and then ladle the broth into it. What I love about this metaphor are 5 things. The first was the mesh bag. Each brought as they were able, right? And what they felt they were. And though each was impacted by the seasonings and flavors of everyone else, the essence of what it was didn't change. Chicken was still chicken, fish, fish, tofu, tofu. When we engage with one another, we're not forced to change. We are able to be who we are. The second thing that I liked about it was that in this setting, they would share with one another. Sometimes I'd get my bowl. I might share with the person to my left, or the person to my right, or someone across the way. Or not at all. Because sometimes you're just not able to. Sometimes you have to protect yourself. While other times you can be as open. But it was all done without prejudice. The third thing I liked about it was the heat. That chemical conflict of millions of molecules slamming against each other at tremendous speeds. The heat that transformed raw to cooked foods that gives sustenance for life. That heat, that conflict that transformed water to broth. That's the broth. That's my fourth point. The broth, when it would come together, was created by the seasonings and the foods that put from each of those mess bags. And sometimes those flavors would marry so wonderfully together, creating a broth that was just... And other times it would be bland. And so other times it would be awful. But it was what they had made in common. What they had made together. And they were committed, and this is my fifth point, to coming together time and time again to make new broth. To repeat the process again and again. That started with a meal, and in it with the creation of poetry that captured the emotions and feelings that they had in their hearts that day, transformed by fellowship. Now, as we go about our lives and seek to create the communities we desire, I believe that persons of multiracial backgrounds and others on the margins of our society give us clues as to how we might move from division to engagement. And teach us how we might love to live a life of isness, love to live a life of andness, so that my story, so that your story, and your story, and your story, and your story up there can become our story.